With that said, it is now 7:06 and we will get started with tonight's topic. And tonight's topic is simply developing a research agenda in 3 easy steps. It's hard for those who write to write the way they do if you don't know the topics that you wish to write about. And if you're navigating in a doctoral program, you're probably being asked to write about, I hope you are, being asked to write about topics of your interest as they relate to the classes that you take. So with that said, I want you to focus on developing your research agenda. You don't wait till you get to your dissertation or wait till you get to graduation before you understand your research agenda. So developing that research agenda is going to be of paramount importance for you. And there's no better time than now to start thinking about and organizing yourself according to your research agenda. And there are 3 simple steps that we're going to get to tonight that you're going to leave out here knowing there are 3 components that you must have in order to articulate your research agenda in 30 seconds. So, with that said, what is necessarily a research agenda? Your research agenda essentially is your core topics that encompass your work and field of expertise. So whatever field you are researching, studying, writing about, those core topics that encompass that speak to your level of expertise in the field becomes your research agenda. Now, in order to have that research agenda, these are things you plan to address that are critical issues in your field. So you're addressing the things that you see as a critical issue in your field. Now that's challenging because what we want to figure out is what necessarily makes it a critical issue. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but for now, I'm going to say that a critical issue is an issue that will not resolve itself through time or through a Google search. So these are critical issues that if we don't address, they will lead to something worse than what we're presently at now. So these are issues that can be catastrophic if left alone for somebody. All right. Now, the cool thing about your research agenda that you need to understand is that it evolves as you grow within your research. So it's not something that's set in stone. You don't have to stick with it forever. But as you grow in your work, your research agenda grows with you. So I need you to really understand that piece, that your research agenda evolves as you evolve in this work. Also, your research agenda should have short and long-term relevance. So it shouldn't be a problem that is going to be resolved in the next 4 years because of political change. So it shouldn't be a problem that will be resolved because we just waited a student out. So if your job is to understand something that is particular to a particular type of student, well, once that student is not in your school, or once you're in a different school and that type of student doesn't exist, your problem is solved. That's not a research agenda. Your research agenda is not how to get Johnny out, or not how to handle Jonathan. It is something that's short-term and long-term relevance. It solves a problem that is existing in the future, a problem we have not addressed yet, a problem that we're looking into, but it looks to have both short-term and long-term importance. And it should seek to answer critical questions in your field. If you're talking to people in your field, you're talking to your professors, you're talking to your classmates, you begin to come across some real key critical questions. And your research agenda should attack some of those questions as they relate to your topics. So you can't solve everything, but you can definitely address the things that are directly in your topics of interest. And they usually resolve around 3 core topics of interest. So in your research agenda, you're looking to address at least 3 primary topics. Now, here's some caveats, things I want you to think about before we get into those 3 components. So caveats about your research agenda are as such. It should be targeted. You don't have to specialize in everything. And I think that's the biggest problem that I hear amongst doctoral students, is that they fear that they will not address everything in education or everything in their field. And that's not your job. Your research agenda should not be so all-encompassing that it addresses everything yet nothing at all. So it should be targeted. You don't have to specialize in everything, but there are a couple of things you would want to specialize in. It also, while being targeted, should also be broad enough so that it enables you to evolve as you evolve in your knowledge and understanding of the topic. So it should be something that after 5 years, you can move to the next phase of this particular research agenda. So you should always see the evolution of your research agenda as you go. It should also be future oriented. Your research agenda should have a future and not be tied to topics that are well settled. Now, think before you go there. By future oriented, I don't mean if you're a historian, you're going to futuristically look at the Civil War or futuristically look at morbid institutions, things like that, or institutional mortality. But it should have something future goal, future oriented, not something that we're discussing that's already been settled. Like if part of your research agenda is No Child Left Behind or A Nation at Risk, it's pretty much been well settled. I mean, you could go and do a historical study and find out all the nuances of it. And even in that point, you're still looking at trying to see how the future was impacted by these particular events. So I'm not saying that historical events are not good. What I'm saying is that your research agenda should point to the future and not be tied to things that have already been discussed ad nauseum. And the last part, and this is important, your research agenda should have group effort. It should not be done alone. I don't want any of your writing to become your personal manifesto. So it should have a situation where you can easily talk to people about it. So talk with your classmates, your professors, other experts within the field, and they should have an understanding of your topics. It should help you kind of move your topics along and grow the topic more. As you talk to them, you should be ready to field questions. Also ready to ask questions about this topic and see what they know and can add on to the perspective of your research agenda. So once again, those caveats, it should be targeted, broad enough, future oriented, and should be a group effort. Those 4 things.